Hello, my name is Alena, and I am a part of the Mage System, which is a dissociative identity disorder system, and I am a protective role, but I've also been a gatekeeper and a persecutor. I'm answering questions people asked me. Do you have you guys ever had any non-humans / animal alters? I am a vampire, and there is another alter that identifies as a vampire or a similar creature, and then there is another alter that is an animal that fronts extremely infrequently. Hey, I'm a newly discovered system, and your videos have been helping us a lot in this regard. I think I would like to ask Alena how much she cares or thinks about her source material, the movie mentioned in her Meet Alena video, or maybe more specifically how she thinks non-humanness can / will change once she heals. If that's a little too heavy, I'd also be curious to hear if there's any joy in discovering where you are from, be it a physical or fictional place, and how that can help connecting to other people. The latter one could probably be answered by any alter. I hope the question is not too convoluted, and thank you so much for the vids. I wouldn't consider myself entirely an introject or even partially. I think alternate states of identity are created from different sources, whether they are an introject or not. They are usually inspired by different people that you've seen or met, and their features are sort of combined. When we were a child, we were shown the movie Let the Right One In, which is a Swedish vampire film from 2008. The vampire in the film was someone who appeared to be a 11-year-old girl, but was actually much older. We dressed up as them for Halloween, maybe our 5th or 6th year alive. I would not say I'm an introject of this character because I do not identify with that backstory as my own, but I would say that a large part of my existence was borrowed from that. But I also think it's important to mention that host alters also borrow their personalities from people and things that they see around them, and that does not make them any different than me. Everyone's personality is a conjunction of traits that they have seen around them. I definitely appreciate that movie and the fact that I am able to be aware of it, but because it's not something that I personally identify with, it's not like I have some sort of deep attachment to it in a personal way. But because it's not my source material in the same way that introjects have source material, I don't identify myself in the movie. I believe I may have started out presenting, at least internally, as a little child vampire, but since in the past few years, I have presented as a young adult looking individual, though it's generally hard to tell. I don't have a set age. As far as my non-humanness changing as I heal, I don't have any plans for healing. Many people have tried to get me to heal in a certain way in the past, and it's just not what I want. I just don't believe it's possible to some extent. I think my identity extends beyond the way that other alters in the system's identities are. I am much more separated than everybody else. My personality is a lot more different than everybody else's. I don't think healing needs to happen. I think I have a system that works, and it does not need to be changed. I wouldn't say that there is joy from discovering that my personality traits were partially borrowed from this film, but I would say there is an amount of closure. That part would better be answered by Brigitte. How do all your alters cope/manage your comorbidities? How does one affect each other differently, or does it not bother them? For example, how does your anorexia affect everyone, or does it not affect some? And another question, how has your transition affected each other? I know Ginger has spoken about it, but how do the other alters feel about it? I am the only other alter in the system that has struggled with an eating disorder, but I put that very loosely because I've never spent enough time in the body to actually engage in long-term disordered behavior as far as eating. And I'm even reluctant to call it an eating disorder because though I appear to be very underweight inside of my head, I do not necessarily think of myself as someone that is attempting to lose weight. I just see myself as so far removed from the human joy of eating that it is not of interest to me. I do not have anxiety. I have a very high threshold for anxiety and pain and harsh conditions. You could say I experience depression, but I don't consider it that way. That's like saying depression itself is depressed. I surely meet the clinical definition of having post-traumatic stress disorder. I often use extreme forms of stimuli in order to cope with that. As far as things like depersonalization, derealization, it is something that is such a part of who I am that I don't even consider it a disorder. As far as the transition, I don't really care. Though I am called she, and I present sort of like a girl, I am also quite non-human in how I feel. So gender is irrelevant to me. I do not feel attached to being female. I just am. Whatever my body looks like outside is not of great concern to me as far as gender goes. How does your autism and ADHD affect you differently? Is it different levels of severity with different alters? Do you have different or the same stims? Does everyone have the same symptoms? And is your ADHD type the same one or not? I do not identify as having ADHD. I simply don't have trouble with those sort of things. I have actually stepped in and written a couple of essays in the past because I have such a good ability at zeroing in on things. That may have something to do with my ability to withstand harsher conditions. As far as autism, it is the same situation with the other mental disorders where it's almost as though I can't have that disorder because I'm not human enough to have something like that, even though I likely would meet the typical clinical definition of it. I do not really stim. I am pretty good at just sitting in the same place. If you don't mind answering this, Alena, how can vampire alters satisfy their hunger without drinking blood, especially when they may find everyday foods and drinks to be repulsive? Also, is it beneficial to have a different perspective on drinking blood since they're in a human body? Generally, whenever the body is hungry and I am out, I don't eat. And that is because, again, I have a high tolerance for dealing with situations where we may feel sick or ill. That's not good for you. I know that. There are some foods that, while I don't enjoy them, I find them more tolerable than most human food. Typically, those foods are bitter. I can enjoy things like black coffee, dark chocolate, strong alcohol, and sometimes more flavorless things like unseasoned chicken. Though I will recommend something not for consumption but just for dealing with general desire to see blood, and that is purchasing fake blood. buy a quart or so of fake blood, and whenever you feel like seeing blood, instead of causing harm to the physical body, you can instead use the blood in whatever way you would like. Probably not eating it though. How much does one or all of you know about the world in general and things that go on in the real world, like politics or family members? Many of ours are as intelligent and sparky as anyone, but they are in a bubble from knowing about the world. I believe I remain generally unaware. I can think about it and remember certain things, but I honestly don't care. It doesn't matter. I only really care about what is happening with family members if whatever they are doing is at our expense, and I feel upset. I always enjoy about how different alters see each other versus how they see themselves. Because the majority of the alters are human and I am not human, I see myself as different from them. And if I were to be completely honest with you, in a way I see myself as above them. If you want to like me, you don't have to watch this part. I am not what you all consider to be a good person, I would assume. I have beliefs about weakness. There are certain kinds of weak people that I do not blame for their weakness, and there are certain kinds of weak people that I do. I blame the individuals who are toxic individuals, but they are toxic in a way that they do not control, that they do not manage. They are overly emotional. They are messy. This leaves one of two options for toxic people to not be weak. The toxic individuals that are clever, or the toxic individuals that seek help to manage this, are the ones that are strong. As far as the people who it is not their fault, are the people such as the individuals in the system. They are human. Though I do believe that L is getting stronger, they have been a weak person. Humans have an innate fear of death that leads them to not be able to understand certain things. Those are things that I understand, and so it is hard to not feel a gap in knowledge. I do not have a lot of empathy for other people, and I want to say that that is not necessarily a bad thing. There is nothing wrong with not feeling empathy. There is something wrong with hurting other people. It is about your actions, not the way that you feel. I think of myself as someone who does not have the same human traits as humans. I don't experience emotions like guilt or empathy. There is a community of others online that do not experience these emotions, and these people, watching them, are what has made me more comfortable speaking with you here today about this. I do not feel bad for people. I do not feel sad for people, but that does not mean that I can't be caring for people. That does not mean that I cannot be considerate or recognize that something can make someone else feel a certain way. People tend to demonize individuals that do not experience empathy in the traditional way. But the truth is that you do not need empathy to act as a decent and ethical person in society. And you do not need empathy to say, I am sorry if something that I did has caused you distress. And you do not need empathy to not want someone else to be distressed. I am willing to bet that even those who do experience empathy naturally do these things all the time where they don't necessarily feel empathy in a situation, but still act in an appropriate way that is genuine. Just because I don't experience empathy doesn't mean that my good behavior is a lie or a front or just something I'm doing because I feel like I should, or just something I'm doing because I feel like I'm obligated to do it. you can do things out of kindness without experiencing empathy. This is a subject that I've wanted to discuss if I were to ever make another appearance on the channel, but I've been reluctant to do so because I don't know if people are ready to have that conversation about alters experiencing different forms of empathy than other alters. Do alters have differing food preferences? Of course. I think I've pretty well explained this. I've finished answering all of the questions. Thank you. Have a good day.